You thought that you could have it all, and life could be a ball. Well, you fell and scabbed your knee. Now you can be free.
Hello and welcome to the Recovering CEO podcast. My name is Derek Maribon. I'm the Recovering CEO, and I'm here with a very special guest. Some of you may know him as the Sober Exec, which I think is awesome. He's a fellow Spartan named Chris Anthony. He's a business leader, public speaker, coach, mentor, and lifelong student striving to be of service to others. Chris has over 25 years experience in technology. He currently serves as the Vice President of U.S. consumer goods at Salesforce Marketing Cloud. Prior to that, he joined ExactTarget, which is an email software company that was acquired by Salesforce for $2.5 billion. Chris founded the Sober Exec to help one or more person navigate their journey through sobriety. He's been sober for over 16 years. He studied marketing at Michigan State, and he currently lives in Los Angeles with his wife and 2 children. So good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Derek. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I was really glad I found you, because how cool is it that, first of all, you're a Spartan. You live in one of my favorite places, Los Angeles, which I love. And then also you're sober, right? And you've come out in the business world to try and make an impact and to reduce stigma. I just love it, Chris.
Yeah, well, thank you for the kind words and all of that. And you nailed it. I'm sober and I'm visible about it. That's not always true, which we can talk about. And it's been very humbling and eye-opening going through 16, almost 17 years of sobriety. But yeah, it's been a joy, and I really appreciate the recognition.
Yeah. So, Chris, I don't know if you know a little bit about me, but I think it's crazy because I started the Recovering CEO. You've already had the Sober Exec for a few years, which is kind of mind-blowing. But to me, it says something that great minds think alike, or that there is a need. There's a need for something like this, right? Like, you've seen it. You work at Salesforce, which is a huge company. I work at a small company, right? So I think it's become apparent to you. Is that accurate, that there is a need for reducing stigma and helping in the workplace?
I absolutely think there is a need to reduce the stigma, and I lived the stigma. I bought into the stigma for 15 straight years, and I hid my sobriety in shame. I thought it was something to be ashamed of. I thought it was something that wasn't something I should be proud of. I had an error in my thoughts, and I had a couple wake-up moments. I'm happy to talk about those as well, but I changed my thinking, and ever since then, it's been the greatest gift, because I have folks like yourself who I've crossed paths with now, and others who reach out and ask for help and say, hey, I'm ashamed and I shouldn't be. You're right. There's no shame in being healthy. So it's been just a wonderful journey.
Mm-hmm. All right, good. Well, I want to get to all those kind of awakenings and
yeah,
I don't know, you could call them spiritual experiences, but let's go back just a little bit, because you and I were both at Michigan State in the early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
That was where I did most of my drinking. And just so you know, it's very interesting now because my daughter is a freshman. And yesterday I saw her post some pictures from, daytime parties at fraternities of St. Patrick's Day. And it's like, oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
And she's very aware of my addiction. That was one thing with my children, is I told them, because one of my jobs as a father is to kind of break the cycle. I don't know if they're alcoholic or addict. I know they may have some tendencies, but I want them to go in eyes wide open, so she knows about alcoholism, but, and I told her, you can go to these darties sober and you'll be able to interact much more nicely, so I don't know, but tell me a little bit about your time at Michigan State. Did you partake in some beverages while you were there?
Absolutely. I mean, I personified every aspect of college life and was the life of the party for sure. And I just thought it was the normal course of what you do. And I think in a lot of ways it definitely is. But for myself, there was, I would say, a more insidious, dark, just problem developing through it. And I wasn't aware at the time, but I wasn't dealing with a lot of things that had happened across my childhood and home life and things that just drinking was a great escape. And I looked to your left and your right in college and everybody's doing it too. So it felt normal and hey, it was fun and you didn't have to deal with problems. So it just took me a long time. It wasn't until, I was in my 30s before it really became deeply problematic and I had to shut it down. But yeah, it's part of college life, no doubt about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's, because I drank a lot and then I switched to marijuana because I didn't like hangovers and I never wanted to drink and drive. But it was interesting, Chris, because after I graduated, I had a lot of shame in relation to Michigan State University because obviously it was a wonderful place, but it took me 6 years to graduate. And I never realized, and somebody pointed this out to me, actually a therapist. She said, you had a full-on disease of active alcoholism that was trying to kill you. So just the fact that you graduated is like a miracle. Like, don't feel bad about it. And it took me years to feel good to go back on campus, but now I feel at peace, right? Because I've kind of gotten rid of that feeling of shame, and I can live in the light now. And now I love Michigan State again in East Lansing. But for so long, it almost made me feel scared to go back on campus. I don't know if you ever felt any type of feelings like that, but
I didn't, or I haven't. What's really ironic, though, Derek, is when I started speaking out about my sobriety and being more visible with it, Michigan State came to me and asked me if I would talk about it openly. There's a recovery community at Michigan State, which I'm actually speaking to soon, more in a virtual session. But I was interviewed. Russ White has a great show on the college radio station there. He's been doing that for 25 years. And I got interviewed on that with Don Kepler from the collegiate recovery community at Michigan State. And I share that because life is ironic. It goes full circle. And the one place where I would say I accelerated into my crazy life becomes the same vehicle that comes back to me years later. And I'm sharing what I learned and where I've grown from that time. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. Like, I always felt like I was the worst student at Michigan State University, and I know you were able to drink, for quite a few years after college. I stopped right after college, but they had me back. So I worked with Luann Simon on some presidential advisory stuff, and I also taught a class there for 12 years. Which I thought was hilarious because I was the worst student ever. And I was teaching 200 students a semester, a class about digital marketing.
I love that.
I know.
I love that. It's
the promises.
The promises of it all. Yeah, Derek. And, you found very similar and even more so. You have now been able to connect the dots between, where you started in your sobriety and are able to come back to the same place where you found struggles. You're able to give back in a different way. That's super cool.
Yeah, it is. We all got to help, right? I think that's the feeling that I think you and I can share. So tell me about this, because you've had what I would consider to be a very successful rise in the corporate world. You were part of Exact Target, right? You were acquired. You've worked at Salesforce. You've been very successful. First of all, how did you manage that? Because you were still probably drinking at the beginning of your career and then you got sober. And tell me about that transition from, before you got sober and then living with being sober, but still being extremely successful.
Yeah. I found myself, let's talk about before I got sober first and foremost. My drinking was something that I was refusing to acknowledge that my life was falling apart in many ways. And yet I wasn't willing to acknowledge that it was tied to that. The drinking was tied to that falling apart. My marriage was not going well. My performance at work wasn't going well. And it's not that I was drinking on the job, but it was, if I'm going out and taking it very deep, partying all night long, I'm sorry, you can't come to work the next day and be your best self consistently every single day. You just can't. And I, happy hours or anything else, just I was the guy. It was like lighting a fuse. Like I'm the fun party guy. And like I said, it was messing up my marriage, and it just wasn't headed in a good place. And it showed in my work. I mean, it wasn't good. And so I found myself in a situation where I needed to stop drinking. My mom was dying of cancer. I had to take some time to get sober. I knew it deep in my soul. And I made the declaration that I was going to get sober. Whole story behind that. But I did in June 20th, 2005, was the last time I drank. And I have honored that sobriety ever since then. And so my life started to get better. Imagine that. I mean, my marriage got better. Right. My work performance got better. Everything around me got better. Now, as you were saying at the top of this podcast here, just because you stop one thing doesn't mean, you get to stop dealing with all the stuff and challenges we have in our life. And it's a day by day, hour by hour, sometimes a minute by minute thing we have to manage. There is no finish line here. But I was clear-headed, and I could start to work on myself. And so about a year later, an opportunity opened up to me to join what was Exec Target that ultimately became Salesforce. And so here's the key thing I want to stress out of this, though, Derek, is the fact that I found sobriety. I started to work on myself, started to improve, and find myself in a better spot. I was really mad at myself and disappointed in myself that I had to stop drinking. I couldn't handle it. How weak of me I used to think that I couldn't control alcohol. Something bigger than me existed. But I was a part of a company that was growing, and I was able to prove myself and grow and grow and grow along the way. All the while, I never stopped long enough to think, I wonder why I'm having success in my career. I wonder why I'm having a good run. I would have never thought at the time it was because I made that decision to stop drinking and be clear-headed and work on myself. I just refused to acknowledge that because I was so deeply ashamed. My thinking changed on that when I hit the 15-year mark, but it was a long road to get there. It was very shame-filled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's interesting. Just out of curiosity, because I know, so stopping drinking is not always easy. There's, it's difficult. And, they say it takes you a year or a few years to kind of get your head on straight. Was there a period where you had to kind of relearn and re-find your footing as far as being a sober individual versus having alcohol as a crutch?
Absolutely. I right out of the gate, I had to from getting sober. And anybody who said, either I'm done drinking or using or insert whatever vice is bad, if you're doing it in a group setting, even if you're taking a month off because you're doing a Whole30 or a diet, I mean, the amount of questions you get, the amount of almost hazing that happens in that moment, because you're making a declaration, hey, I'm no longer doing something that I have deemed unhealthy, or I'm taking a break from doing something unhealthy. It's a different world you're entering. And this comes back to a lot of the stigma, but no, well, what's going on? Did you have a problem with it? Did you have a challenge with it? Why are you stopping doing this? And with drinking specifically, it's crazy. It's people really go deep on that for whatever reason. So you have to find your identity in a way of the new you and how to talk about it and be comfortable and proud and confident of it when you can. I had to relearn all of that. I also, I talked about shame here a little bit. I also just had to learn to navigate away from a lot of those difficult conversations. At the time, and for 15 straight years before I decided to start speaking out about my sobriety, I was avoiding conversations, or I'd avoid situations where I'd have to talk about my sobriety. And that's a whole change in who you are and how you handle situations. And so it was definitely finding new footing.
Yeah, I remember when I was getting sober, I also, so in addition to quitting drinking, I went vegetarian, and I kind of packaged everything together, started working out, and I just told people, yeah, I'm on a health kick. I quit eating meat, quit drinking, just throw the drinking in there casually. But it was a dramatic change, and it really was. But yeah, you're right, because people are kind of obsessed with it, and it's partially because they want everyone to drink like them, right? It
Yeah.
feels better when everyone's drinking, and when someone doesn't, it kind of makes some people feel a little uncomfortable sometimes.
It can for sure. And the irony here is if you tell somebody, hey, I quit smoking because I was getting lung cancer and it was literally killing me. People are like, oh man, good for you. Was that tough? Yeah, good. Cigarettes are bad. If you say I quit drinking because literally it was killing me, people are like, whoa, hold on a second. What's going on? What do you mean? So I don't judge others. It is what it is. My ask always is that if someone's making a healthy decision, whether it's smoking or stopping drinking or stop eating too much cheesecake, give people a break. Let them be okay with making that change. They're simply being healthy. Healthy is being healthy. Honor that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, you talk about cheesecake. Chris, honestly, I feel like I'm addicted to everything. Sugar, I don't gamble because I know it's dangerous, but I love sports. I go to Michigan State, all their football, all their basketball games. There's everything out there that I'm addicted to, scrolling on my phone. Mm-hmm. And really, it's all just trying to numb and escape, So I've had to try and, create habits, right? So the positive activities, replacing negative activities like drinking with positive, like working out. I've been working on meditation, which has always been difficult, but lately there's been these apps and things you could use. So, but what type of healthy habits are you using to kind of balance a stressful, maybe executive job with, sobriety and being a good father and husband, all that stuff? How do you balance it all?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things to establish is really thinking about what your life's vision or purpose is. And it took me a very long time to get super crystal clear on what my purpose in this world is. But setting a vision for yourself and documenting some of the values that you stand for is a great way to memorialize on paper. Here's my vision for my life. Here are things that I value. And revisiting those daily. And so you're touching on some really good things that are challenges for anybody with any kind of addiction is that this burning need for more. And it's really what you're describing in my mind is this addiction to more cheesecake, more scrolling, more insert whatever. And so what I've discovered is that routine is my friend. And that when I revisit my vision and my purpose, and I literally do it every single day, and I mix it with, does this action reflect my vision and my values? It has really helped me pause myself from making a bad decision. By the way, I'm not good at not eating a lot of cheesecake, but we're working on that. And we all are working on something. We can always have more discipline. But staying centered on purpose and values, I have found personally and professionally, no matter what, and having routine behind it introduces discipline and a framework to operate in. It was Einstein. It's an old Einstein quote. I'm big on quotes, but inside a discipline lives freedom. Excuse me, my voice is going out a little bit here. Inside a discipline lives freedom. And you hear some thought leaders today say discipline equals freedom. And either way you put it, it's true, is when you have discipline within a framework, you can find a lot more freedom from vices or from insert whatever. So that's how I've been able to really take the control and I should say manage all of that addiction to more.
Yeah, I love that, Chris. That's wonderful. And let me quote the great Mel Tucker when he says, keep chopping, and Mel's Michigan State football coach, and he's teaching these kids. He says, I don't want you to get too high. I don't want you to get too low. I want you to be able to forget about what just happened, the last play, and just stay focused on the goal. And I've even taken that philosophy to heart, because I am good at the highs and the lows, right? But how do I stay consistent? The other person that I think about when I hear you talk about being inside the discipline gives you freedom, right? So, there's also there's the 12 steps, right? So living inside, with these principles, it gives me the freedom to be the person that I want and to do anything I want, really. You know, as they say, we can go anywhere and do anything as long as we kind of maintain our spiritual condition or our peace of mind. But I also think about someone like Zuckerberg. I don't know if you're a fan or not, but I like how he wears like the same outfit every day. So his whole closet is full of the same T-shirt and the same pants, and then he doesn't have to think about it. I love that as a simplicity concept, you know?
Yeah, there is brilliance in simplicity, and back to this idea of yes, to everything you're saying, this framework creates simplicity, and the more you can operationalize your day and your time, I have found that it's a game of small wins. If you've read Atomic Habits by James Clear, you know, one of his quotes, and we're having fun with quotes here, so let's keep going. He says, every action you take is a vote, good or bad, for a future version of yourself. I love that, because when we make the conscious decision to follow routine, have discipline in what we do, honor our vision and our values, your likelihood to make better votes for yourself now and in the future are much higher. Furthermore, good habits, no matter how small of a win in them, compound and move you to new levels of growth. By the way, we could be talking about anything with this. I know, like, we're talking about, you and I are having a conversation about managing addiction. This could be anything. This is like getting better at learning something. It could be exercise. It could be doing your job more effectively. So the simplicity in the framework is all there. It's a matter of creating one and staying true to it and constantly adapting and getting better from it, in my mind.
You know, and it's interesting because I have not read that book, even though I need to, but I did listen to it, and maybe you listened to it as well. Brene Brown interviewed him in her podcast last fall.
Yeah.
And it just blew my mind, right? So, yeah, each small step, like just do one push-up. If you can't do 50, I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, his thing is progress over perfection. And the book spoke to me, and I am confident it will to you as well, just around like what it's like having to manage addiction or manage this daily, I don't want to say monkey in our back, but it's something that we have to manage constantly. And when you think in terms of small wins that stack up and compound over time, it makes so much sense. Good habits or bad habits, you pay the price for them. And it's all about small habits that help you win more often.
Yeah, and it was interesting to me because sometimes you look at these people and they're so successful, right? Whether it's the author of that book, Brene Brown, all these people. But then he fully admitted on the podcast that he wrote down all these recommendations because he struggles with being disciplined, waking up on time, doing something every day. So he turned that into a whole way for living. So nobody's perfect, right? It all takes a little bit of effort and awareness, right?
No, nobody's perfect. There's the line, mechanics drive the worst cars. I don't know if that's actually true. If anybody that's a mechanic listening to say, no, I have an awesome, totally tuned up car. But a lot of times that happens is we get really good at fixing other people, fixing other things, but we forget in the process to fix ourselves. And we have to remember to take care of ourselves. I think that's really, really important.
Yeah. Yes. So tell me, you know, you've been in business for a while. Some of these principles, Chris, you know, that you're teaching and that you personify, do you see other executives struggling with this stuff too? I mean, you know, I know you've said you've seen a lot, or now that you're come out as sober, people talk to you. Do you feel like addiction in the workplace is a problem? And are we raising awareness in general?
It's a problem. I think that there are especially in sales. I'm in sales, by the way, just for perspective. You might have said that at the intro, but I'm in sales, and sales is a very wine and dine type of culture. It's alcohol and partying is very much a part of this industry, this culture. No matter what is being sold, I think alcohol is just like central to it. It's just a key part of it. My point in just focusing in on sales for a second is that I've heard a lot more horror stories, if you will, about individuals coming to me and saying, hey, I am ashamed of being sober, or I'm ashamed of just not drinking. Forget about not being sober. Some people just don't drink. I mean, that's just a fact. And yet they're ashamed of it because they are being made to feel as if they're not a part of the team. And they feel as if it's keeping them back from growing. I thought that for a very long time. I believed me not drinking was a weakness of keeping me back from growing. I was still successful. I still had a great career. My point, though, is that it is still a problem in the workplace. It, I think, has only been accelerated more and more with the pandemic, where, you know, someone could be sitting on a Zoom call with a mug. I'm holding up a mug because you and I are in video together, but, you know, who knows? I could have a glass of wine in it for some cases. I think this idea of the visibility of addiction suddenly got put away for 2 years, moving to Zoom. It opened up a lot more opportunities for addicts to use and consume. And so, long way of getting to, it is still a massive problem. It is still massively stigmatized. I am trying to normalize it to the best of my ability. I'm grateful that I work for an amazing company, Salesforce. And by the way, I mean, I'm here speaking as Chris, not on behalf of Salesforce, but I'm really proud of my company. I mean, they have honored my sobriety. No one's ever come to me and said, whoa, hey, stop talking openly about your sobriety. Not at all. In fact, just the opposite. We've created a group internally that celebrates sobriety. We can talk about that too, but I think that's the exception, not the rule. I hear people all the time come forward and say, I'm scared at my job because what'll be thought about me, or I won't get an opportunity to grow in my job because I'm sober. And I'm like, that's awful. You're being healthy and you feel suppressed from being able to grow. That's not okay. So by me speaking out and trying to just help others feel okay with sobriety and like, hey, I'm doing pretty good, I think, in my career, in my life, and I'm proud of what I created. I know my purpose, and I'm sober. So let's normalize this. Let's be okay with this and not hold it against somebody. But there's still a long way to go. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I do think it's very interesting, you know, and if you think about it, Chris, like some of the mistakes that happen, some of the biggest mistakes that happen in corporate America, where, you know, people get fired or they cross boundaries, you know, they often almost always involve alcohol. And I think that's the thing that nobody ever wants to talk about. Like, you know, I did this stupid thing when I was drunk. And, you know, there's that old saying in AA that says, you know, every time I drank, I didn't always get in trouble or arrested. But every time I got in trouble or arrested, I was always drinking, right? So I think, you know, sobriety in the workplace, really for longevity and for being able to avoid all these Me Too moments and these things where you're going to cross boundaries and get in trouble, is very helpful to be sober and like more clear thinking. So it's a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, I absolutely. You feel, to hear that individuals are struggling or feel like they can't be themselves or can't, it feels as if they're limited simply by a choice they're making, is just so concerning to me, and something I want to try to normalize as much as possible. You know, you mentioned Brene Brown, and she makes a really good point, which I wholeheartedly agree with. And I'm talking about being more visible and proud of, you know, these healthy choices in sobriety that we're making. It doesn't mean working your stuff out loud. In other words, this isn't about like, I'm going to work all my problems out publicly and put it on everybody else to help me solve. I mean, there's the difference between asking for help and being visible with like what you're working out. I'm simply saying just having some pride and normalizing making healthy choices. And that's what this is about, is we all have something. I don't care who you are. We all have something that weighs on our shoulders. And it can be addiction, it can be hurt, it can be loss. There's something. No one is free of that. I know this to be true. And that's okay. Like, let's normalize that. Let's just honor when someone makes a healthy choice to be a better person. I think that's absolutely fantastic. And I want to just respect that through and through and create an environment where it's more normalized and visible.
Yeah, I love that. And I know you mentioned your Soberforce, it's called, I believe. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Mm-hmm. How does that help people at Salesforce?
Yeah. Yeah. So thanks for asking. So on June 20th, 2020, which was exactly 15 years of my sobriety, I quote unquote came out about my sobriety, and I put an article on LinkedIn called 15 Things I Learned in 15 Years of Sobriety. And Derek, the lead up to that, mind you, I hid and would never have dreamed for 15 years before that I would do that. But I put this article out there. I decided it was time. No more like masking and being disappointed in myself for being sober. I'm proud of it. And it's the reason I have the life I have. So I decided to put it out there. And that was really scary. And I thought, oh man, what's going to happen? Am I going to get judged? What's going to happen? But I just, in my soul, I knew I just needed to be more visible about being sober and stop being ashamed of it. So I did it. And of course, zero bad things happened. In fact, just the opposite. The most beautiful thing happened. Within an hour, someone sent me a message and said, oh my gosh, I didn't know this. I need help badly. I'm not going to make it through the day. Can you help me? And in that moment, and that person got help, by the way. But the beauty of that is that in that moment, I found my purpose in this world, and that is to be of service to others. The other thing that happened, among many things that ties back to your question, is some other executives at Salesforce, 3 others actually, saw the post and said, awesome. We love that. Thanks for doing that. We're sober too. Maybe we should talk and do something with this. And so the 4 of us got together and we got on a Zoom and we said, wow, this is awesome. We're 4 executives in highly visible roles in this incredible company. And what can we do to help others? And at Salesforce, we have quality resource groups and affinity groups. Like we have Vet Force for veterans. And it's all play on the Salesforce name. We have Faith Force, bringing together religious communities. We have Ability Force for anybody that's mobily challenged. All kinds of different forces. That is a beautiful thing in our company that brings communities together. So we created Soberforce. And like overnight, we had 300 members. And,
wow.
and it ran the gamut. Like it was people that are sober and want to stay sober. It was allies, spouses of sober people. I mean, just insert all different interests in the sober community. We suddenly had a whole new internal community we didn't even know existed that was created overnight. And a lot of anonymous people, of course, like tons of people that have messaged us quietly and said, hey, I'm watching, I'm following. I'm preferring not to disclose my participation. Great, no problem. But the fact that they're getting something from it, and we've had lots of people reach out for help. We've been able to be more visible. We've had guest speakers. It's really a beautiful thing. And now we have other big organizations coming to us saying, how do we duplicate this? How do we create a Soberforce type community in our company? So it's just been one of the most rewarding things I've been able to have the gift of being a part of.
Yeah, that is so exciting. How amazing that the catalyst of that one article, that one detailed post was a catalyst to all that, right? So cool.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, tell me a little bit about, some of this wisdom, like what are some of the important things that you learned that could help someone who's trying to get sober, newly sober, and trying to live life in the workforce?
Yeah, there's a lot of wisdom to share, but I'll highlight some big learnings that I've had in this process, just from the before and after of being in silence about it to coming out the other side of being much more visible and open about sobriety. And so I think I'll go back to this idea of really have some pride in the fact that if if an individual is making a healthy choice to be sober, feel good about that. Feel great that you're honoring your health to be a better version of yourself. In my mind, when someone says, and again, I don't care if it's an addiction thing or some kind of self-improvement, when someone's working on themselves to be a better version of themselves and puts them even better in a position to help others, I got to tell you, there is nothing cooler than that. It's badass. And we need to feel good about that. But we forget and get caught up in shame and what will other people say and think, and try to remember that you're not alone and that it's okay to create a better version of yourself. Don't get caught up in the future. Don't get caught up in the past. Be focused on the moment now and be proud that you're doing something to create a better version of yourself. It is admirable. It is cool. And there is nothing wrong with just trying to improve yourself. So that's the big one that I spent 15 years denying, that me making healthy choices every single second for 15 straight years was a shameful thing. I wasted, I don't want to say wasted, I'm exactly where I should be, but I spent 15 years thinking me being a healthier version of myself was something to be ashamed of. And if someone can hear that and feel better about the fact that you don't need to feel bad, in fact, it will get you so much farther. Healthy choice of any kind will get you so much farther than you ever can imagine. You will accelerate your progress far faster than I did and do even greater things. So there's a wisdom.
That's powerful. That is powerful. No, I love that. I love that, Chris. And you're right. I think, sometimes we have feelings that are just, like, don't talk to strangers, all these thoughts that are instilled at us. There was that shame that was just innate. Like, don't talk about these things. We don't talk about these things. These are family secrets. And it's all just BS, right? It's all just, I don't know. It's a friend of mine says, one of the reasons people don't get sober is that it's a very hard choice to live in the light. It's sometimes just easier to live in the darkness. And it's nice that you've come out right into the light and helping others to expose their, shine their lights as well, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's easy to keep kicking the can down the road and not taking things head on. I think that, just to take what you said a little bit further, because I think it's very insightful, is when you're signing up for no longer muting whatever pain you have inside or whatever misery you may be dampening with, other choices or refusing to take head on, that's hard work. That's why I say people that make a healthy choice like this, it's badass because you are being the toughest of tough. And it is hard to be vulnerable. It is hard to take on those moments, but I'd say that, moments are fleeting, and it's easy to get caught up in the idea of, okay, I have maybe some big nasty things that I've got in my life or I've created in my life that I need to tackle or deal with. Well, the sooner you start dealing with them, the sooner you get to move beyond them and get to a better place. But that's hard to remember. That's scary. But it's all about just getting through the moment. You're not trying to get through forever. You're just trying to get through the right now. And if you can embrace and lean into whatever hard pain and darkness that's there, it's going to fade so much faster than kicking it down the road. But it is very hard work, and it's scary work, but it pays off.
Yeah, Chris. No, I'm so happy. I'm so happy I met you. And one thing this is interesting. I read this recently because I'm doing this workbook. It's called the Abandonment Workbook. Just because I was adopted, right? So trauma or addiction is often caused by some sort of trauma from the past, and it takes work to figure out what that is and then to deal with it, so I don't have to have that problem. But it says that if you suffered some sort of dramatic trauma at a young age, then you spend the rest of your life in pain management. And that concept blew me away because, my trauma happened when I was very young. And are you telling me I spent the rest of my life in pain management from age 1 or 2 or 3 when I had no concept? And that just blew my mind. And eventually it evolved into alcohol and drugs and all these things. But what an interesting concept. Have you ever, I don't know, I just wanted to share that thought.
I like it. I mean, I think that it's very true. And so you have 25 years of sobriety. I have almost 17.
Yep.
Now, to somebody that has 25 days or 17 days or 25 minutes or 17 minutes of sobriety, I always say to those individuals that might look at someone like you and I that we haven't figured out. And what I what I tell them is two things. One, I say, I definitely don't have it all figured out. And actually that to that individual that's newly sober, I say, we're actually in the exact same place. Meaning that while I'm further down the road, the distance to the ditch for each of us is exactly the same. And we're the same distance away from making a bad decision. And the difference, though, is that you and I have a little bit more muscle memory. We've managed longer and we've found more tools. So we're on equal footing with the newest of newest sober people, but we just have built more muscle and more skills and tools. Ideally, we have. And that's part of what we're out there to share. And that's what you're doing with this great podcast. And so it is something, and I'm tying this back to that, what you were talking about that you read in that workbook is that there is no finish line here. This is a marathon, not a sprint, and it is lifelong management of it. But when you have a framework, when you start to establish a vision for your life and things that you value and what you care about, that creates that framework to operate in and manage it day over day over day.
Yes. So I just have two more quick questions for you, Chris, because I know we want to wrap up soon. But so I know you're on the Los Angeles Sports and Entertainment Commission. Did you have anything to do with the recent Super Bowl that came to L.A.? And just wanted to know if you wanted to share any experience on that.
Yeah, so myself personally, I did not. The Los Angeles Sports Entertainment Commission is really an exceptional organization that is all about helping the city of Los Angeles spread its wings from a visibility perspective for events, for tourism, for honoring those in the community. And anybody that Googles it, the amount of work that the organization does in the community is just exceptional. It's just super cool. And the organization is also behind trying to help getting things like the Super Bowl and the LA 28 Olympics here and other sports and entertainment, hence the name, events to stay and be a part of Los Angeles in this important city for those type of things. I got involved through my work a number of years ago in just trying to contribute where I can and share some ideas and thoughts. And it's something I've maintained contact with and been a part of the community of the Los Angeles Sports Entertainment Commission. But for the Super Bowl itself, no, I didn't have personally a hand in that, but I'm a huge supporter of it. And the individuals that are at the lead of that are just some of the most extraordinary people helping really drive great events in the future for Los Angeles.
Okay. Yeah, I thought it turned out pretty well, at least from my perspective. Second, I know you're on Metallica's board for their nonprofit. So have you gotten to meet them?
Some of them, not the whole band. So it's the evolution thing. I help with their advisory board. So they have a wonderful charity called the All Within My Hands Foundation. And so the All Within My Hands helps in a couple of areas: hunger relief, workforce education, and then around disaster relief, like when there's major global events, local services and supporting them. And here you have this rock band, which I'm a big fan of. You have this massive rock band that has global exposure. And what a great opportunity to help others. And so the foundation itself is very focused on creating, with its reach, helping individuals in those areas. Like when there's wildfires, or, there's initiatives around community colleges where women in welding is an example, or helping individuals that want to get some blue trade collar skills and find jobs. The foundation has been able to provide some scholarships to those individuals and really help them get a start in their career. And so mixing my favorite music together with trying to help others is really like the coolest thing ever to me. Heck yeah.
Well, one of the best concerts I ever saw, and you might have been there back at Pine Knob, I think it was 1992, was the And Justice for All tour. And the Cult opened up for Metallica. And I think I kind of lost some hearing that night because it was loud. Yeah, it's super cool. They're just, it's an unbelievable organization doing wonderful things. Yeah, they're a wonderful band. All right, Chris. Well, pleased to have the Sober Exec on our podcast. I am going to put links to all your materials in the show notes. And it'd be great to meet up. You know, if you're in East Lansing or if you're in town, you know, maybe we can go to a game together or something. And we got to stay in touch, man. But any parting words you want to get to our listeners? Any final things you want to say?
Absolutely. So first, thank you, Derek, so much for having me on, and appreciate your vulnerability and why, you know, your background and why you created this in the spirit of helping others. I am confident you, just through this vehicle of speaking out and inviting guests on, helping more people than you know. So really am grateful for that. And then the chance to talk a little bit about my story. I'll just echo what I said earlier, is there is no shame in being healthy. And to add on to that, there is no shame in asking for help. If you want to get and create a better life for yourself, simply ask for help. There is nothing we can do alone. And I'll end on a quote, which is, I've never met an accomplished person with an easy past. It's really true. You've got to ask for help. And even if you've had a really hard past, the opportunity to grow and become a better version of yourself requires asking for help from others. And you can become that accomplished person, but you can't do it alone. So thanks, Derek, so much.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful, Chris. Thank you. Thank you, everyone who listened to The Recovering CEO today. And we will see you next time. Have a good day, Chris.
You thought that you could have it all, and life could be a ball. Well, you fell and scabbed your knee.